Yep, it's recording now. Yep.
Over the past 9 years, Ariana has been on an intense journey with multiple of major losses in her life, beginning with the unexpected death of her husband. Ariana found herself on a deep spiritual quest that was destined to completely shift who she believed she was and opened her to a path that at the time of his death would have seemed like a fantasy movie. No stranger to change, Ariana found herself challenged to the core as she shifted from predominantly left-brain careers to openly to deeply creative and heart-centered side that had been put on the burner for so long. During this period, she explored many different healing modalities, as well as embarking on a committed journey to look at deeply held beliefs that allowed her to settle in for a life that was far less than what was possible. At the age of 55, she took singing lessons and went from tone deaf to singing beautiful soul songs. At age 60, following the loss of her most of her life savings and her home, Ariana coined the term paradigm buster. This is dedicating her life to breaking down the deeply held paradigms that had been created in the density of conventional thought. With wit and humor, she loves to present examples of what is possible, especially within the realms of money, women, and aging. A powerful, heart-centered leader, inspirational speaker, author of the upcoming book, Wisdom of the Camino, and transformational coach, Ariana lives and breathes from a place of what if. She has been dubbed by one of her coaches as the Queen of Possibilities. Please help me welcome Ariana.
Hello everyone. Thank you for your patience. And I just want to request if everybody can check their cell phones to make sure they're turned off. Okay. So, I have a sense that there's many people here for different reasons. And before we start, I just want to take a little survey of how many people here have actually heard of the Camino and or have walked it. So who here has walked part of the Camino before? Okay, just one. Okay. And who here has thought about walking parts of the Camino? Awesome. So today's presentation, just so you have a sense of it, is partly about my journey to get to the Camino and how I made the choice to get going on it, and partly about what actually happened once I started the walk. So just as an introduction, you have a little sense of who I am from Natasha's little speech. And where I really started with this journey was at the end of a fairly tumultuous part of my life. And I had put my house up for sale because the universe had made up its mind that it was the only way it was going to get me moving into the next part of what I came here to do. So I left Calgary to visit my stepson in Osoyoos shortly after the house sold, and I was able to pay off my debts, and I had enough money for a new beginning. And my stepson owns a beautiful vineyard in Osoyoos. And I had no idea at that point in time of what my plans were. All I knew was it was to do something different than what I had been doing in the past. I knew there was something new for me. It was like one book was closing and another book was opening. But I didn't really know what that was. But all I knew was I was so tired and exhausted from that whole process of selling the house and getting myself out of debt that I just really wanted to do nothing. I wanted to rest. So I had no real plan. So I'm in the vineyard one day with my daughter-in-law, and she looks at me and she says, Ariana, why don't you go have a grand adventure? Why don't you leave your little dog with us and go off around the world? And I thought, oh, no, I don't think that would be the logical thing to do. I thought about what my family might say. And so I kind of went online and I had a feeling it was her dream that she would have liked to do. So I wasn't really convinced that it was the thing for me to do, because I was still tied up into that feeling that I had to, you know, use this nest egg that was left in a way that was more structured and more to the point of what I wanted to do. It didn't seem to me a good way to take what nest egg was left and to start out. So I let it sit there for a little while. I wasn't quite convinced. And I went for an appointment with a physiotherapist. And I was sharing with her some of what I'd been through and what my daughter-in-law had suggested. And she said to me, Ariana, have you ever thought of walking the Camino? And it was like a jolt went through me. It was like, at that moment, things started to come into play. And at that moment, I had already planned to go to Ireland for a week with Jennifer Huff. And I was thinking about how I could fit in another teacher in Scotland in September, but they were far apart. And all of a sudden, this great journey just went into being. And it was, I came up with the name Drink, Pray, Love. So for those of you that have heard of the book, Eat, Pray, Love, this is my Ireland. It's really much more important about the beer. And then Spain instead of India. And then Bali to relax and to integrate all those things that I was going to learn on the trip. And what was interesting within that, when I said yes, I was leaving in around 3 weeks. So for those of you that have walked the Camino, it's a 700, the distance is actually very variable because it changes every year. So in my mind, it was 760 kilometers before I left. And there's part of me that was saying, you know, you're a little overweight to be walking 760 kilometers. And so that was my big plan for Ireland. I would get into shape in Ireland. And so I made the decision to go. And it just seemed magical. In fact, the greatest story, the story I love to tell the most, is as I was leaving Soyuz, in my mind was, I still didn't have my head around the distance. You know, when someone says to you 760 kilometers, how many of you really have a real sense of what that is? Like, it seems like a big number, but I didn't have a good sense of what that really meant. And I was thinking as I was driving, oh, it's, you know, it seems like it's about 8 hours, 10 hours to Calgary. I wonder if it's around that distance. It seemed like it was about equivalent. And as I left, I had planned to meet someone in Kelowna. And I got to Kelowna, this was a new person, and we agreed to meet somewhere. I didn't know the city, so I went around the block a few times, and it took me a while to park. And I leave that lunch, and then I see a fruit stand, so I'm doing all these little detours on my way home. When I get to Revelstoke, I'm starting to see the kilometers, and I'm thinking, holy mackerel, this is like going to be really close to 760 kilometers. And I'm thinking, well, it won't be that close. And then I leave, and I'm one of these people that actually believes the mileage thing on the dash when it says you can go this many kilometers before your gas tank is empty. And so I have a little resistance to buying gas in Revelstoke. And so I looked and I calculated the distance to Louise, and I thought, oh, that's not going to be a problem. But as I approached Lake Louise, it was clearly a problem because it was now saying you have 0 kilometers to empty. And I wasn't really that close to Lake Louise. And as I went down the road, I'm now driving a lot slower. Okay, there's this part of me thinking, and it's getting dark. So I'm really focusing, trying to keep my gas pedal really even so it doesn't use too much gas. And I've always gone to Lake Louise from Calgary. So all of a sudden I'm under an underpass and I'm thinking, crap, I just went by the turnoff to Lake Louise, and now we've been on 0 for a long time. Longer than what seems to be even possible. And I've just passed the first little turnaround, so I'm thinking, okay, you guys gotta get me out of this and it's gonna be good. So I go to the next turnaround, come back, and the gas station is closed. And I'm thinking, ah. So there's another gas station, I get to the other gas station, I tank up full, I head to Calgary. Now this is the really cool part. I drove into the place I was staying at 760.0 kilometers at 12:17, which is my birthday. So I was so sure that I was on the right path with this trip. In fact, when I really think about it, those guys are good. I mean, they had to like have me look for parking. They had to distract me as I'm going by Lake Louise. So if she goes in now, she's never going to get great mileage, right? So, okay, we'll push her attention over there for just a brief moment, just long enough for her to miss the overpass. So I felt at some level that this was a trip that was really, truly meant to be. And it was truly part of me closing that book and opening a new book to what was possible in my life. I still didn't know why I was going to do this trip, but I was excited about doing it. And of course, my family got the phone call as I was leaving so that they couldn't actually have a conversation with me about how ridiculous it was for me to have gone through all these months of debt and pain and whatever. So I just left them the message and thought, well, you've got 4 months or 3 months to just work that out among you while I go off and have my grand adventure. And so I left them a cryptic message instead of going on my drink, pray, love journey, just like to stir that pot. And I know they love me, but they do shake their head a little bit about my shenanigans sometimes. And how great is that? How do you want to actually have people be predicting what you're going to do next? I think I've come to shake their trees a little bit. So I head off to Ireland. And Ireland, so I really think of the 3 places as part of the whole Camino trip. When you decide to do something in your mind, it already starts from the moment you say yes. It's already beginning. So Ireland was my great kind of what I considered was going to be my training ground. And there's one thing about traveling alone. It's like there's nobody to blame when things don't go well. You know? It's like you're looking around and it's like, this is my stuff. Damn. So I had gone with this great assumption that I was going to be able to hike all over this beautiful Ireland. But I hadn't really done any research into what Ireland was like. All I had was this kind of vision in my mind that it was these great lush green meadows and lovely hills and dales, and I just thought it would be the most fabulous place for me to get into shape for the real Camino work. And what happened? I had this great adventure with Jennifer Huff, and they all sent me off with blessings. And then I realized very quickly that Ireland isn't really set up to be hiking with a backpack. It's like, I would try to get somewhere, and these roads are only wide enough for 2 cars, and beside the roads are these bushes. And so if you're walking with a pack, it's very slow, because it's kind of like you're walking and deciding, looking around the corner to see if something's going to whack you as you go around the corner. So after a few days of this, or a little while, I started to get a little discouraged. How many of you, when you've decided to do something, and you haven't really thought it through yet, but you thought it's a great idea, how many of you ever have times when reality starts to show up? It's not always just saying yes. Right? Sometimes you have to actually do some homework. So it's not always going to be smooth. when you say yes. But I will tell you, as I get further into the trip, it will be worth it. And when you're alone, you have two choices. Because you have no one else to blame, you really have to start to look at your stuff. And I saw how often it was that I like to make it someone else's fault. I don't think there's anybody in here that probably has that talent, but I just saw it, and it was like I was getting frustrated, and I was getting tense, and I thought, this isn't feeling so much like a spiritual journey, this is feeling kind of yucky. And I went to stay in this house one day, and I had gone to the tourist office, and they said, I need somewhere to play, because this whole trip was really about letting go of control. Right? It's huge when you don't plan anything ahead, and it's just leading it up to the universe. Well, the universe sometimes is good, sometimes has got some ideas that you need to see a few things. So it's not always going to be roses sitting there. Sometimes there's going to be a few thorns, especially on the side of those roads in Ireland. So this nice lady books me in this place for 2 nights. I'm thinking, I'm just going to stay for 2 nights, and so I don't have to do the nightly, where am I sleeping? And I have to walk they said it's really close, so that was a half hour on these roads. So I drop off my pack, but then there's nothing to eat there. So I had to come back on the road. And then I have to go back again. So after 3 times on the road, I'm thinking the second night is just not an option here. But the man in the morning thought it was an option. So I thought, I was deeply pulled into little girl at that moment. And it's interesting what will take us into the inner child, especially when things aren't going to plan and when you're far away from anybody that you really can phone and say, cry on their shoulder or whatever. So I went up and packed, and I thought, okay, well, if that's what it is, he took my extra 10 euros and informed me at that point that there was this nice little path that I could get by on. He said, there's this, you don't have to go on, I noticed you're walking on the road. And I'm saying, yeah, well, that's where I was told to walk to get to you. He said, well, you can take this stream out here, and it has these rocks across it, cut across a few fields, and you're going to be fine. And then he gave me my 10 euros back, because I think I was pouting or something. So I think he had a little pity on me. Well, I get walking across these stones, and then I'm coming across all these fields, and I don't know whether there's wires and there's electric, little warnings, these are electric wires, and to keep the cows in. So I'm thinking, well, this is really lovely. So again, not really what I had planned. And I got through these fences gingerly, and we were going to throw something and see if it fits. And then there's cows, and I'm thinking, holy crap, is there a bull in the field? Like, I don't, and I'm getting, like, now I'm back in my little owl, poor me, ain't it awful mode. And I come to this farmer's house, and by then I was just so discouraged. I was just, I wanted to hike, and here I was dodging fields and cows, and nothing seemed to work, and I wasn't getting my training in, and how was I going to walk the Camino, and all the stuff that goes into our heads when things start not to kind of go according to plan. So by the time she stopped me, and I thought, okay, now I'm in trouble, because she's saying, why are you walking across my land? They're actually not like that. So she was very helpful and pointed me out what road I needed to go to, and I was heading for the tourist office looking for the bus. I wanted to get out of there. It was like I had really, at that point I had just said, screw it. I didn't know what I was going to do, but it was like I didn't have the resources left. It's, how many of you find that sometimes when things just aren't going right, we can't tap into the wisdom that we have? We don't always have access to it. There's times, and I've got it together pretty much. Most people would think that I deal with things pretty well. But in this moment, I wasn't dealing with things very well. So I talked to the lady at the tourist office and give her my sad story. And she looks and says, there. It's going to be okay. I've got a great hike for you. And you don't have to go on any roads. And I'm thinking, yeah, finally I get to go on a long hike. And I have no map, so she sort of points me towards where the hike starts, and I find the hike, and I'm going across. And all of a sudden, I come to this, I stop and eat my lunch on this little stile. It's gonna, you have to climb up these stairs to go past the fences. So I have my lunch, I'm thinking, this is really cool, I'm getting to walk. And there's this fork, and there's no sign. There's a one way I have to take my shoes off and walk across the stream, and the other way I don't. And I'm thinking, that frame. Nobody's going to think you're going to walk across the stream, so it must be this way. Not. So here I am in the midst of this Ireland heath, and I'm have no real idea how I'm going to get to where I'm supposed to go, and whether this path is going to go in a whole different direction. And all of a sudden I'm like hearing water, but I'm not seeing water. I'm hearing water underground. And I realized that the ground is really spongy. I take my pole and I'm taking steps, and I'm thinking, this is not a good place to break your leg. This is not a good place. You have no cell phone service. Nobody knows where you are. My mind is thinking, no, this is not really that good. So I think, but just be careful. And I can see the traffic, so, you know, it's not like this horrible, oh my God, where am I going to end up? I can see where I'm going, and I just can't see how I can climb up that steep hill to where the traffic is. So I continue on, and the sheep are cheering me on. Go, Ariana. They got their little blue backs. They're grinning and saying, oh, another pilgrim lost in the meadow. But I finally make it up to the road, and guess what's at the top of the road? Ice cream. There's an ice cream truck right where I came up, no kidding. An ice cream truck. Okay, so the manifesting up to then hadn't been that good, but it was like I kept at it. I knew where I needed to go, and I had 2 ice creams. And of course now it's like not really close to the time I'm supposed to get to where the rest of the journey was that she gave me. And I had to go down this really steep hill. And I get to the bottom of the hill, and I'm thinking, I still have about 10 kilometers to go, and it's 5 o'clock. And I'm tired by then, because it's hard work trying not to break your leg. And I go out to the side of the road, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have a little rest here. I don't know quite what to do, but if I have a little rest, I'll feel better, and I can just go at it. And all of a sudden, there's this beeping car beeping at me, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm a little nervous. Guess who walks up? The lady from the tourist office. Well, I'm wondering why you're only this far. I gave you lots of time to get to where you're going, and you should be like already there. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's possibly true, but I'm not. And this is where I am. And she said, get in the car, I'll drive you to the next hotel. Only she went backwards. So I was actually losing some of my time. But she dropped me off, I got my room. I was happy, I got fed, there was 2 hikers with me, we had a great conversation. And the next day I thought, okay, well there's obviously a slight change in plan, because now I have to add about 15 kilometers to the next day's plan. And it's storming. And I'm thinking, so I'm getting a map this time. So I'm asking, where's the map? And she's saying, well, I haven't got the extras, so I'll lend you this, you have to leave it at the next place. And I'm looking at the map, and I'm on the computer, and I'm actually deciding what I'm going to do. And I'm sort of adding up the kilometers in my mind, then knowing about how much I can walk in a day. And she comes over and she said, you know, if you would wait till 11 o'clock, there's a couple that's driving to the next town. So into the car I get. I said, I'm not actually that attached to being a hero here. I think the ride sounds really good. And when I got to the next town, I had some choices, and I made the decision to go to Killarney. And there was more adventures, but I know you're all excited about hearing about the Camino part of everything. So I made my plan ahead of time, so usually I was leaving everything to the last minute, but I had my thoughts of when I wanted to start the Camino, and that was on the 24th of August. And so I booked my airfare. Like, you're supposed to, you go to this little town in France. And first of all, for those of you that actually, we'll do a little segue side thing here. For those of you who don't know what the Camino is, who haven't sort of, was just intrigued by the talk, the Camino is this walk, a spiritual walk across northern Spain that's been done for centuries. It's walked by anywhere from 100 to 200,000 people every year. So it's a hugely popular walk from many perspectives. Some people go because they want to have a spiritual journey. And some people go because they want to just have a sports journey. And some people go just because someone's told them it might be a really cool thing to do. And I've never had this really driving need. I read the book by Shirley MacLaine many years ago. I never had any real sense that this was something important, but as soon as that lady had given me the cue, I knew I had to go. So there's a guidebook, I don't know if it's actually gone around. So you actually, if you are going on the Camino, this is probably your most important investment. You can see it's been well used. And it's a guide to what to take. It's a guide to each day. It tells you, everything you need to know about that day. Where the water is, how far it is, the elevation. So some of the days will have maps for each day. And he's divided this route into about 33 days. And within the route, you can see there's actually some alternative places, and then there's a visual on how up and down it is, so you get a sense of, is this going to be a hard day or a medium day or whatever. And when I booked the airfare, it was going to this little town in France called Biarritz. I don't know, did you go there? Awesome. So I didn't know, I knew you had to take, technically to get from Biarritz to the starting point, you have to take a cab, and you have to take a bus, not a cab, sorry, a bus and a train. And remember, because I only had 3 weeks to do the plan, I didn't learn to speak Spanish before I left. And my French is kind of high school French. I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. And I thought, maybe I'm going to run into someone at the airport. The optimist, right? I'm going to see somebody there and still have a pack, and I'll be able to pick them out. And then I'll make friends, and then I'll have someone to hold my hand to get me to the starting point. And I get to the airport and I'm looking around and there's no packs. How can that be? That's like this plane is going to the destination. So my mind is kind of, I'm going to go to plan B here. Well, we'll worry about that when we get on the ground. So I sit down and talk to this beautiful woman from Dublin, dressed like beautifully matching, has nice shoes, and we're chatting, and I think, this is a really nice lady. Well, where are you off to on your journey? Oh, I'm going to walk the Camino. So all of a sudden, here's my potential cab person. And she said, my friend's with me, we're looking for someone to share a cab with us. So that was pretty cool. So we get out, and I'm thinking, that was not bad. I'm getting the manifesting thing going on. We get in line, and this lady, Sylvie from Germany, comes back and says, are you ladies going to the Camino? Yes, why don't you come up where I am, because I can share a cab and we'll do it 4 ways. So not only did I get to share a cab, it cost me around 25 euros, and I got there in less than an hour. And I met these 3 lovely women at the same time. So my journey was definitely starting out really fun. I didn't have a place to stay yet. And so the other 3 all had their places to stay, and I decided, well, I'd just go and look after we got everybody settled. And so I go with Sylvie up to her, and you stay in things that are like called auberges. They're like a hostel in Canada. And so we're in checking in for her, and she's saying, my friend Ariana's didn't have a place to stay. Can you recommend someone that would be a good place for her to go look? He said, well, the bed next to yours is empty. So I'm thinking, I like this. And then you're supposed to, I didn't have time to do a lot of details before I left, and so you get a little passport that proves you were there. And everywhere you go, you get them to stamp the passport. And so I knew I had to go get one of these little passport things. And at the desk, they had the passports. How cool is that? So anyway, that was the beginning of my journey, and that was August 25th. So a year ago today, I was in my backpack, walking and walking and walking, having an amazing adventure. So I started, and the cool thing was, I was nervous about the first day. Did you go the whole way on the first day? I had been told to try and get a rest spot in the middle of the day, because it's a tough, the first day is up over the Pyrenees, so it's all uphill. And what they don't tell you, the uphill is easy. It's like the 5 or 6 kilometers at the end going down. Oh, painful. But what was really cool, in Ireland I met this lady in Galway, and I stayed in her bed and breakfast, and we became buds. And when I was paying her, she gave me back 10 euros. She said, I want you to have your pack carried one day on this trip. So guess which day I picked up my pack? The first day, and at 6 o'clock, I was real happy that I hadn't been carrying 20 pounds on my first, I think it's around 28 kilometers or something, the first day walking. Remember all that training that I was going to get done, really, some of it got done, but I was literally not in shape. So if you're thinking of doing the Camino, think a little bit ahead so you have some time to train. And it's better to lose the weight before you go. Because if you think about a 20-pound pack and you pick it up and you think, crap, I've got like 3 of those hanging around my tummy here. It's like a lot of extra weight to go up all those steps. So plan ahead, and if you're going to go, don't let that be your excuse though. Because it's easy to create an excuse of why it's not possible. I invite you to just open if it's something that's calling you. And this is true for everything in your life. You can either be open to possibility, like the Queen and Alice. And Alice says, one cannot do impossible things. And the Queen says, I dare say it's because you haven't had much practice. Why, when I was your age, I used to think of at least 6 impossible things before practice. So when something's calling you, whether it's the Camino or whether it's something else in your life, there's something in your heart that you really want to do. I call it the battle of the what if and the yavat. So are you going to live your life from what if and have amazing adventures? Or are you going to let the yabats take you out? Because it's really easy. I can tell you, it's really easy for the yabats to get going in your mind. If you're called to do the Camino, if you're called to do whatever you're called to do, just tune in. Because I really believe that you won't be called to something if it really is there for you. I truly believe you have everything you need, even though the yabat part of your brain is saying, I don't think so. I don't see how it can happen. It can happen. I would never, ever have dreamt that I would be on that adventure. And I can tell you, my life shifted in that walk. My life, I found me. I found me. And everyone that goes on that walk, or everyone that has a great idea, within that idea you're going to find yourself. You don't have to go on walk to Soyuz. It's a long way to go. If you can go on it, I think you'll find that amazing things will happen in your life. You're going to open up to possibilities every step, because no matter what you think, the Camino has some other plans for you. No matter what your plans are. I like to say, I thought I went to walk the Camino, but I found out that the Camino was walking me. I found out that it was shifting things in me, powerfully shifting things. So I got through the first day, and I'm not going to go into too much detail of each day. I have a few slides to give you a little taste of things. And I had some amazing adventures. I met people from many lands, and on the first day, I'm going to have to skip a few slides because I tend to have them as a little bit of a thing to keep me on track, and then I sometimes forget that I'm supposed to be on track. What stops you from going on a trip like the Camino, or what stops you from actually listening to that voice in your heart that knows that you've come to do something that you're not doing yet? People have a hard time, I wouldn't say so much letting go of their suffering as letting go of the safety net. There's often a challenge between staying with what's comfortable, with what's familiar. It's out of the place where we don't know what's going to happen next that we stay in that place and we don't step into the grand adventures of our lives. And it's a natural place. The ego wants you to be safe. It puts up the gate, and it puts up the bars, and it puts up all the butts it can come up with, because the ego really wants you to be safe. And when you can get past that, give it something to do. You know, give it another assignment. Move it from shipping to receiving. Not a very good assignment for the ego. So, the comfort zone, these are just sort of ideas for me to give you a sense of where I came from. I had some limiting beliefs that were holding me back, that I let go of in order to go, that I should be responsible, that it didn't make any sense for me to venture off. And here I'm this widow walking alone in 3 different countries. Could I really do that? Relax, you've got what it takes to do what you're born to do. And I'm absolutely going back to do the Camino again. And the why you do it is one of the most powerful components of manifesting. And so I urge you to look at the why, whether it's your walk that you want to do, when you can start to create that why as being powerfully strong. And don't worry too much about knowing all the details. But most failures are simply due to projects started without any attention to why. And I know that I am one of those. Trust me, I've been through a lot of fires in different businesses in my life, and some of them were grounded and some of them weren't. But the ones where I didn't have a good why for why I was doing it were the ones that seemed more likely not to succeed. So this is Ariana on day 1. This is at Saint Jean, Pied-de-Port, at the very beginning. And my beautiful friend from Germany was taking the picture. So I went from going alone to all of a sudden having a buddy. And the other 2 ladies were taking a different route. When we got to the top of the hill on the first day, this is really cool, because they have a truck that actually tracks what countries everyone's from. Is that cool or what? What's interesting to me is they don't have them in any kind of alphabetical order. So my logical left brain was already to kind of erase and get the book. Yeah, be alphabetical. And they're not even in order by any other, my friend Natasha would be kind of...
I'd be twitching.
So they're not even by the, like, the most frequent at the top and going in another direction, so... Canada, yay! 4 people from Canada. Woo, woo! I actually met this cabinet minister from Quebec later on that day. But this was really cool. So these guys, they set up, you get a stamp there, they set up a little refreshment stand. How thoughtful is that when you're on your like first day? And you're supposed to really plan your day when you're walking the Camino. You have to know where the food is and where the water is. That's really important. So that's where the book comes in handy. But I hadn't really, there was no place to buy lunch where we stopped the first time. Or actually, I must say, no, I just didn't think of it. I had lots of water, but they had these hard-boiled eggs, and they had little yummy protein things, and they had energy bars, and you just put your donation in the box, and they had water, and it was really a lovely thing that they were there to stamp you as you went from France into Spain. So that was day 1. And one of the things that happens, you might wonder how on earth you know where to go when you're on the Camino walk. There's all sorts of arrows. But the Camino is also like life. Sometimes the arrows lead the wrong way. Sometimes there's 2 arrows that seem to be disagreeing with each other. And so this is kind of the tangled web of arrows in normal life. And then these are some of the arrows that are, like, here's one that's actually crossed out and it's pointing in another direction, which is up, which is actually confusing. And the arrows are not in always the same place. Like, every now and then, if you're going into a big city, there's big signs, and you can just look for the signs. And I find it actually that navigating through the cities is actually worse, because there's so many more places you really have to be paying attention. Sometimes they're on the ground, sometimes they're on the side of buildings, sometimes they're on the side of a tree. This is on a cross pointing up again. Well, that was obviously made by some enthusiastic Christian. So whether it's the Camino or whether it's your life, you're going to sometimes be confused. And that's when that really is important to tune into your inner knowing. There's some times that you're going to take a wrong turn. I got up one morning and I'm following these 2 girls, and it's dark. And I'm actually, one of my top skills is not direction. In Ireland, I actually had to use the compass on my phone, because in Ireland, the streets changed about every 2 blocks, and most of them aren't labeled. And if they can't find a building to put something on, they don't put anything. But people give you directions based on the fact that you should know where all these things are already. So I learned to use my compass on my phone when I was in Ireland. But what happened was I was walking. This is kind of going back to the last slide. I was walking and I was following these 2 ladies. And so you get up in the morning and it's dark. And it's like, what on earth? Like, you are about to make some turns and follow some roads, and sometimes it's pretty straight through a town, but sometimes it's not. So I followed these 2 ladies who happened to be Canadians. And then they turn around and they said, "Oh, were you following us? We don't know where we're going." So it's like, how many times in our lives do we actually follow people because we assume that they know where they're going? How many times do we just blindly accept that somebody else has got the right plan? So I turned around and I was able to find my way, but it got me thinking about how many times in my life I've kind of got off track because I didn't do my homework. I trusted that someone else had the right path for me, or to have the map. And I certainly have found that's not always true. So next, this is a few days later. We came to the top of this hill, and by then my legs, actually I have to tell you, my legs are in a lot of pain. One leg especially. And so I was walking a little more slowly than normal. But I was walking alone because I'd managed to ditch a couple of people that were walking too fast for me. And this lady with poles, oh my gosh, I had to say, I could hear this click, click, and it was like, I'm a spiritual person. I'm a spiritual person. This isn't going to annoy me. And all I could hear was this click, 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 click. And so we got her to try and put some little covers on the bottom of the poles. And I'm a skier, so I'm used to doing the pole thing. And my poles never seem to make a noise, but this click was really bothering me, and I hadn't transcended the quick thing. So I thought, well, I'm just going to slow down a little bit, and she'll want to go ahead. So she'd wait for me. And then we'd start out together, and then I would slow down, and then she would wait for me. So that was my lesson of the day of really forgiving myself for not being transcendent of the click, click, click. So I managed to come to a place of being by myself, and I walked up to the top of the hill this day, and there somebody had created this amazing labyrinth. And I thought, wow. And what you can't see is a military base that's just to the left-hand side of it. So it's kind of an interesting place. Somebody must have thought we needed more loving energy up there. And I know what it is, because I've been on my spiritual path for a while. I've been to some amazing labyrinths. So I knew what it was. All of a sudden, two of the people I had previously met came up, and they're really lovely, lovely people, and I'm showing them how to walk the labyrinth. So we take off our packs, and we actually take the time to have this unscheduled piece of the journey to walk through this amazing labyrinth. And then they go on, because they're walking faster than me, and I'm actually getting really good at not competing. That was one of my huge things, that I'm a rusher, a hurrier, get there. How fast did I get there? You know, did I break my record from yesterday? Well, when my leg started to get sore, all that kind of had to go out the window. And I had to stop rushing, and I started to see, you know, really what was behind the rushing. And I found that there was this little memory from childhood. It was like, if you don't get it done quick, there's going to be trouble. How many of us have like these things that are so subconscious, we do them? I'm like 60. I'm still rushing well after nobody was going to, you know, do anything or have any effect, but I was still rushing. And it was powerful to kind of get the sense of that it was, I could choose to do something else. In fact, the Camino shows that for me. I had no choice but to actually do something different. And I got to like being last. And I tried to avoid people. I got to be alone. And it was like so delicious to walk slowly and just like be in the energy of the whole walk. I mean, that's really what it's about. There's no rules, actually. Sometimes it's about being with companions, and sometimes it's about, you're on this trip to go inside. Really, it is an inner journey kind of a trip. And I'm so grateful that my legs got sore. Because I could have missed a lot of things. I could have missed so much on that walk if I just been in good shape. So Ireland was perfect. Because if I had got in shape in Ireland, I can't even imagine the things I would have missed during the walk. Sometimes what seems to be the worst thing that can happen, or the plans go to shit, excuse my language, but sometimes that's the best thing that can happen, but we can't actually see it at that moment. when I'm walking my dogs, every day I live in Bearspaw now, I'm walking my dogs down this hill, and as I look down the hill, I see this beautiful river. When I get to the bottom of the hill, I have no idea there's a river there. And when I look at things from my perspective of mostly living my life at the bottom of that hill and not knowing there's a lake or a river, or not knowing this dream man is over here on the right and I'm trying to go left and my spirit's saying, no, go the other way. He's over there. If we can get to, when we get to the point of trusting that there is someone that's actually directing traffic. And sometimes it seems like they've got confused out there. Sometimes it's not going according to plan. Sometimes it's just, you don't see until 2 months later or a month later what the real plan was. It's like a setup. So it's fascinating. So if I hadn't hurt my leg, I would be like rushing through this amazing journey. So the lady that I was with, this is what I call the angel. This lady was so incredible. So I catch up to my 2 friends. My first friend is not feeling very well. She's got some diarrhea and some stomach stuff going on. And this lady is like, Mama, let me get some tea for you. Let me get this for you. Let me do this for you. Let me wrap up some toilet paper for you. So remember, when you're on the Camino, there's generally the bathrooms are not all that convenient. And usually if you really have to go, there's a little challenge about finding an appropriate place. And as you know, when you get further into the journey, it's on the Meseta, which is like the plains, and there's a long way to go before you got any bushes to hide behind. So she's supplying her with toilet paper, she's got Coke, all the friends of hers, she's saying, can I give you a Coke, can I give you a donut, can I give you this? And she's like, I don't know how the woman makes any money. And so then she decides, no, it's not important that I give you all this stuff, I'm going to call the ambulance just to make sure you get to the city okay. And she phones the ambulance. And I think, okay, she's going to offer them some Coke. I know it. I'm just telling the next person to smart. She's going to offer the ambulance people Coke. And yes, she did. Free Coke for the ambulance people. And you know what was interesting was, I had a chance to go with her in the ambulance. And I don't know what was going on in my head about being the hero. I could barely walk at that point. Trust me, that day, my leg was really, really sore. And as they drove off, because my other friend was with her, I'm thinking, oh, that wasn't extraordinarily brilliant of you. And I thought, wow, what was that all about? Why wouldn't I just accept the fact that I could just nicely get in?